Hanging out at home, up at 60%, that highest figure on the chart. But working from home, 48% of people are wearing loungewear. Let's face it, we're working from home looking like this, okay? What we're seeing now, though, is multiple different activities,
Can you imagine these prices?
such as light exercise, travel, quick errands. Loungewear is being used for more and more activities outside of the home. This is where I just change for a moment. Et voila, I'm ready to go out. And that is what is happening. The younger generations that we surveyed not only are using loungewear for the activities you see, but are beginning to actually go out, entertain, socialize, and meet friends wearing loungewear. So see, you're going to see this more flexible usage patterns emerging for loungewear. Okay, we asked people, what does comfort mean to you? Seeing now, though, is multiple different activities, loose and flexible. And bar is reflecting the percentage saying that each attribute and the importance to their loungewear purchase. So comfort being that highest importance level for them. In the grey bar, you're seeing how satisfied people are, how content are they when they actually buy and wear loungewear with comfort, with fit, with quality. And this is where the opportunity is. There is a gap. People want comfort, they are not getting comfort. They want fit, but you see again a 13-point difference on fit and quality not far behind. Okay, so this is where the opportunity is for our industry to really respond to that need that is global across all generations for comfort. Then we ask them, what's the wish list? Very, very consistent. More comfortable fabrics. Our American consumers are very, very focused, but the European consumers,
this is a great example of unnecessary
also, very focused on comfortable clothing.
But I get it.
You see this need for versatile
you need to
clothing,
make sales,
more
right?
loungewear items emerging as well, and that reflects the changing usage patterns and behaviour of where and how you're using loungewear. We are passionate about sustainability at Naya, so we were very pleased to see the emergence of sustainability as a key trend. But very clear, it is not the number one driver. Comfort is the number one driver. In our research, we did look at fibres. Cotton is king, and I guess will remain so for a number of years. However, you are seeing consumers wanting and expecting brands to show new fibres to them, and they want to experience new fibres. So when it comes down to the fibres, again, as a fibre manufacturer, we did want to delve a little bit into this area. We saw, again, a consistency around the importance that consumers place on different fibres. So here you see the percentage of consumers likely to purchase based on loungewear fibre features. Okay, so I won't go through every one of them, but you will see that sustainability, quality, and comfort are clearly there. And perhaps for the fibre side, sustainability and quality are some of those key ones. I will point out something in the research that we are consistently seeing, and it's this emergence of durability as a key fibre attribute. And it sits between both quality and sustainability. We have seen pilling, for example, as a key important attribute of a fibre. People don't want to buy a garment and 2 days later have it all pilled and feel they need to discard it. People don't want that. People want their garments to last longer and stay in their wardrobe longer. This keep looking new. We have seen this again and again in our interactions as a fiber manufacturer. Wash after wash, wear after wear, people want a long-lasting newness and a long-lasting freshness. And the third area I'd highlight is this ease of care. People don't want to have to do dry cleaning. They want an easy launder. They want garments that are stain resistant and don't wrinkle. Okay. So again, these are the fiber features that came back in the survey across the board as those top areas. So I'm coming up to my time slot here, but I did want to just summarize the key findings again for you. Love it or hate it, loungewear is here to stay. Comfort is the key driving factor. However, the sustainability switch is happening, and consumers who want brands and indeed expect brands to offer more sustainable loungewear items is in around 66-67%, and as you can see, very, very consistent around the world. Okay, so I shall close here in terms of the presentation, but I do think we have some time for questions. So any questions in the audience? We have a gentleman at the back. And
Ok, mais essayons en fait. Et donc, nous l'avons développé dans le sud-ouest de la France avec un tricoteur. On a pris des fils, on a fait des essais, on s'est planté, on a refait, on a recommencé. Et finalement, le produit, voilà, je le porte sur moi et il est juste splendide. C'est un produit thermorégulateur qui est ultra... Et c'est vrai. Le lin, c'est la matière la plus sustainable, la plus durable qui c'est vraiment le projet de faire que des vêtements en lin, en 100% lin, qui vont régénérer
Okay, let's study French
Moi, ça
together.
fait 20 ans que je suis dans le secteur textile de la mode, donc je connaissais un peu le
Textile
fil,
de la
le
mode.
tricotage, le produit fini. Avec mon équipe, pendant ce certificat, on cherchait, on s'est renseigné, on est parti à la Fédération du lin, on a été voir des tricoteurs, les filateurs, qu'est-ce qu'on pouvait faire, les numérométriques de fil. Et j'ai réfléchi aujourd'hui, alors comment réactualiser un peu cette image vieillissante du lin pour le rendre beaucoup plus moderne. Aujourd'hui, tout le monde est en sweatshirt, en hoodie, en t-shirt. Le t-shirt est déjà fait, mais je me suis dit, pourquoi pas ne pas faire un sweatshirt, en fait, en molleton, gratté, en lin. Tout le monde disait, oh là là, on l'a jamais fait, c'est très compliqué, c'est très... Ok, mais essayons en fait. Et donc, nous l'avons développé dans le sud-ouest de la France avec un tricoteur. On a pris des fils, on a fait des essais, on s'est planté, on a refait, on a recommencé. Et finalement, le produit, voilà, je le porte sur moi et il est juste splendide. C'est un produit thermorégulateur qui est ultra résistant, léger, il a énormément de bénéfices. En fait, et c'est juste...
Robert Grand taught me how to learn language. Let me see actually if I can find his more talks on languages. Language. He said that I should learn basically like words first. And action words as well, like verbs. And then after that, you know, get into the flow and the rhythm.
Are you a student? Or do you work for an organization or a...
It's not that. If I can find... Language of light. Pyramids. Interviews. Yeah. I want to watch this.
That we're going to be having today with a couple of guests that I think are just amazing individuals. And one of them is Neil Sahota. Neil is an IBM master inventor. He has worked with the United Nations in artificial intelligence subject matter as an expert. He's also a professor at UC Irvine. We're thrilled to have Neil here. He's been on our advisory board for, I guess it's been almost 3 years now. And he's become a great friend also. He has more than 20 years of business experience, and Neil works to inspire clients and business partners to foster innovation and develop next generation products and solutions powered by AI. So he's got a lot of experience spanning several different sectors of industry, including healthcare, life sciences, retail, travel, transportation, energy, utilities. Gosh, you've done so much. And he's all around just a good human being. So we're happy to have Neil with us today. And my second special guest is Jahan Jamali. And Jahan is with Sarson Funds. He's the chief marketing officer and co-founder. He's in cryptocurrency and blockchain and technology and digital asset educator. And he talks often about Bitcoin, fintech, blockchain, digital assets, and cryptocurrency. He formerly worked in the intelligence community for the United States government. And both of you guys are just, I'm thrilled to have both of you here today to have this conversation with the three of us, because I think there is not probably a more important discussion to be had as relates to where things are in the world right now. And it's pretty shocking, actually, as you look at it. And I want to first off just sort of like let you kind of vent a little bit and tell us how you feel about the current circumstance related to what's happening with social media and AI, and how do we get this right back on track? I'll let Neil go first. Go ahead, Neil.
All right. Well, I'm excited to be here. So thanks for having me on, Robert.
Sure thing.
You know, they say data is the new oil, and unfortunately, that's a sword that cuts both ways. So we've got this essentially war to get as much data as possible and centralize it and utilize it. And that's why, you think about like, a lot of social media companies, they're really data companies as a result.
Mm-hmm.
Is it fair that we don't get to leverage our own data? Are the services we get from social media enough? Are social media a little too invasive? I know we talk about other things, but the flip side, unfortunately, also is it's also this whole data is the new oil is stifling advancements in medicine, in providing services and other things. Think about it. With AI, we have like systems that can actually look at an X-ray and detect like lung cancer. And people are like, why can't we do more? We don't actually have enough data available for the researchers to actually do that. So there's, on one hand, there's a lot of data being plucked from us we don't realize. On the other hand, we don't sometimes share the data we should be sharing just to advance the human condition.
Right. Thank you. And Jahan, what are your thoughts on the current circumstance? And what have you noticed on social media of late as well?
Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me on the show, Robert. And Neil, I'm going to 100% agree with you. And data is the new oil for all intents and purposes. And I think one of the things that folks need to wrap their head around is that the current structure of governance in our world, not only from a government perspective and international relations, but as it pertains to how we even identify, hasn't really caught up with the advancements in data. I want to give you a quick example. social media platforms, the internet in general, has allowed us to connect and interact with folks all around the world. And that data, of course, is being collected in a variety of different ways and can be put to a lot of good use. But it's created this concept of transnational identity, right? Where you are starting to look and associate beyond borders. And I don't think that the governance structure we have in the world today is really caught up with that.
Right.
And what's resulted is we've had this sort of siloed and centralized control of data in these, quasi, government, large social media platform companies, and they're almost starting to merge to a degree as well. So I think that as we start to...
Did you just say government merging with social media companies?
Well, I mean, for all intents and purposes, they are, right, Robert? I mean, look, lobbyists walk the halls of Congress all day long.
Straight right there. Who's speaking?
We're in this dynamic now.
Oh, sure.
Where you have a few different groups of power players. You have nation-state governments. You have NGOs. You have large multinational corporations. And where they interact is where they overlap in regulation, where they overlap in their goals. And what we're seeing is sort of like this, by default centralization of power and control. So I think that one of the main drivers to be able to help decentralize and liberate access to that data at an individual level is going to be to a degree the separation of state and money, which a lot of cryptocurrency proponents have talked about as a possibility. So we'll see how that plays out. But we're in a very, very interesting time. We're transitioning out of the traditional nation-state system, and a lot of people haven't really come to grasp with that yet. So we've got exciting times ahead of us, but we have a lot of work to do.
So this whole issue of censorship, right? Selective censorship, and I've also recently experienced it myself.
Nice, right?
In fact, I have 2 Instagram accounts. One of them, I have a large following on, and I was not able to just do a live because I got a picture that I wanted to put out to my community. It was just a hand drawing that basically got deleted and by the AI. And I was told that it was against the community policy, right? And it was, I'm into Egyptology and I follow a lot of Egyptology. And I mentioned, and I don't know if it's because I mentioned the word Osiris and Isis, which is from Egyptian mythology in this picture I had hand drawn. And that may have been the reason why it got deleted, right? Because it was at a moment where ISIS-K was happening, and this is just a hand drawing, like literally a hand drawing. So here we are, I'm getting censored by the thought police. And because of that, I was not even able to do a live on that Instagram platform. So I had to go to my other Instagram platform that I just set up. Literally, I just set it up last night because I was concerned about stuff like this happening. And sure enough, I was right. Luckily, already, several thousands of my followers have already moved over to this other page in one night. And I still have my other page. But, this is becoming very commonplace. And it seems like, this is clearly a mistake, but it's like going to the Politburo, trying to ask for like, wait a minute, this is a mistake. This can't be right. And actually, there's just no response. And I can only think that it's because they've got so many of these, they're inundated with these types of requests right now. And anytime you mention the wrong words, so I just, I believe all censorship is a slippery slope. And so my question is we've got an AI expert here. Why is this happening? So why is it so commonplace? How much of it is just completely by accident? And how much of it is maybe partially intentional? I'll give you one other example. One of my friends, he's from Mexico City. He's a Toltec Indian shaman, right? And I met him in Mexico City. He went on my page and his name is Gorilla. His actual name is Gorilla. And I wrote back, "Hi Gorilla, how are you?" And that got deleted from the community as well because Gorilla must be a racist term. So now I'm painted on some list somewhere as like a terrorist for saying ISIS and a racist for saying a guy's name.
I'm not surprised, Robert. That's the
AI.
big challenge that we have. Think about it. I think when they say there's 2 trillion tweets a day, there's not enough people to actually sort through the data. And
Sure.
you're right, using all these AI machine learning tools, it really boils down how we train them. So the data we use, is that data biased? And the human trainers, because we have to give the system rules on how to make decisions. And the more variation, the more we have to teach, the more time we have to invest. And as a result, you see a lot of people working on stuff they don't fully understand, or there's lots of scenarios they don't fully actually ever think of. Gorilla, unfortunately, is a good one. It is a racial epithet for African Americans. Google got in trouble 4 or 5 years ago because fine if you're a white male, not if you're a woman or an ethnic minority. And if you were African American, it actually did think you were a gorilla. Were those guys trying to be racist? I don't think so. But I think you had a lot of people that were probably white men developing the system, training the system, and they never think about the diversity of human people, right? So when we talk about like the importance of data, just think about even the human face alone. It's not just eye color, your nose shape, skin color. It's also, are you wearing glasses or not? Are you wearing a hat or not? What are different kinds of hats? So more variation requires more training.
So, okay, but there's also seemingly kind of a very strong narrative, right? That's happening here, right? There's a lot of censorship that has been happening, not just to me, but to my friends and everything, people that I see. I mean, is any kind of censorship a good idea? I mean, we have a freedom of speech as a First Amendment right. And in this day and age, right, how do you maintain a democratic environment when you don't have freedom of speech? When the norm has become one where everyone has a soapbox, and that today's proverbial soapbox is the sort of the public forum is social media. So yeah, they'll say, well, you can still go to the town square and, jump on a soapbox somewhere in reality, but nobody's there, right? That's the problem. Mm-hmm. There's nobody there. So this has become the new forum for that soapbox. And now all that has to be done is to take away the megaphone. And so then, of course, doesn't that then somehow in a dystopian way connect these corporations with their agenda to getting people elected that they want to get elected? I'm not Democrat and I'm not Republican. I vote both sides of the aisle and always have had. But the question I have is, how can we have a democratic environment when we have this kind of rampant censorship, whether intentional or unintentional, happening?
Yeah, it's certainly fascinating. It's like I think a lot of these social media platforms, I hate to say panic, but I think that the entire industry of online information is in a state of panic. They're chasing a new business model, right? Certain things, hyperbole yields more clicks, and clicks yield revenue. And I also think that a lot of these platforms are very protective of their communities and don't want to be seen as losing their potential customer base. So you have a lot of these passive types of controls where it's you have a few people at the top of a company, of a social media platform, that are in effect putting the rules in place for what they perceive to be the value system of that entire of the aggregate users on there, and that's very troublesome. All right, because it can really walk you down a slippery slope. So I think we're in a lot of changing dynamics with regard to how data is monetized, and I think a lot of these platforms are trying to predict what they think the values of their aggregate user bases are going to be, and humans are infinitely fallible, so we'll see how that goes.
Neil, what are your thoughts on this?
100% in agreement with Jahan, and that's one of the challenges. Is at the end of the day, we're using a service with these social media sites, and so they control and they're designed to influence, and they've gotten really good at subtle influence, right? Even nudging us towards certain products, certain people to follow. That it makes it really tough for us to realize sometimes what's going on. And in your case, Robert, right? It seems obvious, right? This guy's name was Gorilla. You're saying hello. You had this picture about Egyptian mythology. But the problem is there's nobody actually looking at that at the site. And even if you file something, it could take forever for them to actually get to. So it's not a question of being fair
they
or
don't
being
care.
right necessarily, right? It's unfortunately, are you kind of towing the line or not? And I think that's the big challenge we have with everything that's floating around in social media and all the deep fakes and the false information or misleading information. I think it's not so much about what we're trying to do, but what generates views, likes, comments, as Johan was actually talking about, that really drives that model. I mean, I think we've all been a victim of clickbait, right?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
a misleading.
Oh, yeah. Well, what about this though? And this is specifically for you, Neil. So, you know, my likes and preferences obviously are known. The data that I am producing is getting somehow synthesized and monetized in what I am shown, right? So the types of information that comes to me is going to be the stuff that I'm more likely to like, right? Because then that gets more engagement, that drives better, sort of values and metrics for the AI and everything else, and then that probably translates somehow to more dollars, right? For the companies, whether in engagement related to advertising or in being able to sell that data to somebody else. So does that then mean that I literally am living in an echo chamber of what I've already chosen before?
Yeah.
That's unfortunately exactly what's happening. I actually wrote an article about this, that social media is good as they're learning exactly your interests and your hobbies and what would appeal to you. And then all they do is feed you streams of the same thing. So it's, all it does is reinforce your existing viewpoint without being exposed to other things and the things you like. So it's
easy,
sort of
it's easier
bubble
to
around you.
right? I mean, it's easier to monetize things you agree with rather than monetize a challenge to you. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, that's kind of mind-blowing. So that means that we're all living in a virtual echo chamber of our own conditioning bias. That means that Republicans become friends on platforms like Facebook with more Republicans, and they're the ones introduced to more Republicans. So they literally believe that everyone in the world that they know thinks the same way they do. So they get a dopamine hit to think, oh, look, I'm right. I'll like that, right? And so what it does is it dramatically polarizes society to the edges, right? Where even someone in the center looks extreme. So this is a problem, isn't it, for democracy? Isn't this a real fundamental issue? Because now we have no ability to even empathize. We've lost our muscle to be able to empathize with other people's perspectives and see their viewpoints, because we don't even ever need to now. And every time we do, it's entirely foreign to us. It's like we're talking to an extraterrestrial.
I absolutely agree, Robert. That's why I think it's ironic that here we are in a time where we're talking about more tolerance and understanding, yet we're totally intolerant of someone with a different viewpoint or attitude or behavior. And that's unfortunately exactly what's going on. We're already a cliquish society, right? Think about even in high school. And now we just be able to create these kind of super cliques that are nation or global. And so if all you ever hear is people that totally agree with you and think like you do, guess what winds up happening?
Johan?
No, absolutely. And one of the things, too, that I think we need to talk about is levels of perception and how that's changed as well, right? My old agency, we talked about levels of perception, right? How I perceive you, how I perceive myself, and how I perceive that you perceive me. Take that to social media for a moment. What people start to get into a habit of is projecting what they want the world to see of them. That happy picture with the family. My, XX Pro filter on my barbecue. And you start to create by default this sort of cyclical envy amongst maybe your old friends, amongst coworkers, whoever else might be in your first layer network and your second layer network. And it creates this race internally of you need to compete with the image of what you think other associates or other friends or other people in your life are doing, but that doesn't really match the reality always. And that's kind of the sad thing. And for your viewers, for Founder, you think is great. You sit there and you scroll and you refresh and you wait to see who likes. You want to get that validation.
I've never
People
done
need to be, well, I know you did, but I was just saying, like, people want that validation, right? They do. And I think that it's going to really affect the way we teach our kids. I got three young kids, and some of my friends thought I was nuts. They got a phone as soon as they could walk.
Oh yeah.
And I wanted them to understand, because here's the thing, like, as I can only tell you, the rate at which we are going to interact with machines is only going to increase. So I don't want it to be like keeping a kid away from driving, and as soon as he gets his license, give him a Ferrari, right? You know, I didn't want it to be that. I wanted to have give them a phone early and start to play with it while I still had some influence in their life while they were still young. But I drive that home early, and I encourage other parents to do the same thing too. Of like, understand what you're seeing here is not reality; it is a projection of reality. And don't underestimate your kid's ability to understand that. Kids are smart, right? So I think it's really going to be important how we, communicate about how we want to teach the next generation. New to us, right? When the three of us grew up, when we were young, we didn't have this, right? We're just figuring it out. But I think one of the things we need to consider is that younger generations now, the 4-year-old to like the 10-year-old, they've known this their whole life. They might not be as easily fooled as we think they will be, right? I think we need to give the younger generation a bit more credit.
Right.
So I think it's going to really come down to like how we parent and how we talk to our kids about this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So is centralization the issue on social media? I started a social media company a while back, about 9 years ago. It was in a specialty space within healthcare. It took off very fast. The very beginning, I made it very clear I would not tolerate any kind of censorship whatsoever, because I think that kills a community. And I can't remember who it was that said, I may fight with you on what you express as your opinion, but I will fight to the death for you to have the right to express that opinion. And I've always believed that. I think it's just a fundamental tenet of a working democracy, a functional governance system, being able to empathize and learning that you don't have to go to on every topic. It can simply just be, okay, I'm going to listen to you and I hear you. And I've learned so much in my life when I've done that, right? If that gets taken away from people because of an AI algorithm, what happens in this world, right? This goes beyond just democracy. It goes to basic, what it means to be a human being, right? And how to even empathize at all. So is centralization the challenge here, that there is kind of this whole centralized, first of all, if you believe that censorship is okay, because we live in a world today where everyone gets so easily offended, right? I don't remember the last time I was offended. I don't remember the last time I was insulted, because I didn't grow up. I wasn't taught that I should be offended or insulted on everything, right? Or that was not my conditioning bias. But now we live in a world where everyone gets so easily offended that even someone who puts their handle as gorilla, and I just say back gorilla, is something that somewhere along the way, the AI was instructed, erase the word gorilla.
Erase.
What about actual gorillas, right? It's like, so now they can't even be talked about. We can't talk about gorillas because the AI says that word is not allowed. I mean, think about the Handmaid's Tale dystopian environment this could rapidly devolve into, because the number of words that are offensive don't go down and get smaller. They get larger and larger. It's like government. Government never contracts. It only ever expands. So is this a centralization problem? And if so, how can blockchain potentially address this?
I would argue that it's more of a people problem, and blockchain can still help with that, because we always talk about people, process, technology. We know we can do things to improve the process and technology side. The challenge is on the people side. So what should be allowed as censorship? Should anything be allowed as censorship? So we're talking about kind of morals and ethics now. And forget about countries. Each person kind of has their own coda. I will throw myself under the bus here. 2018, I was asked to give a keynote at GSR, it's the big global regulators conference. And in my speech, I said what everyone was thinking but doesn't want to put a voice to, right? In the digital age, there are no boundaries. right? You can port technology, you can access social media in most places, right? There's really nothing to stop that except whatever, guardrails these companies put in place themselves. If you're talking about using this stuff and trying to do what's right or encourage right use, what does right actually mean? Now you're talking about people's morals and ethics, and that's the thing. And I will tell you that when I was done, no one clapped. People were visibly angry. I remember the deputy general of the UN ran up to me and was like, "Really brave thing you did, Neil. It was the right thing to say, but you made no friends. You should probably get out of here," right? So
Wow.
basically make it surprisingly, they invited me back the next year. And when I was walking around in the hallways, guess what I was hearing? I was hearing the regulators, little small groups, talking exactly about that. What would this baseline ethical model actually be?
Yeah, I mean that's a big question about what is ethical, because at least it's maybe taken me 52 years to learn that even myself, all the things that I thought were the only ethical choice, by some strange coincidence, always somehow benefited me. Right? And I think I can't be the only person that does that. It's like, I may not be the one who looks to see how many likes you get after you make a post. That's a joke, by the way. But the fact is, right, like, it's taken me that long to learn that a lot of the things that I thought were hardcore, black and white issues, were actually just the things that were benefiting me. And
well, I think, Robert, a lot of people have a hard time negotiating the fact that
Nice.
every decision is economic that you make, and every decision is selfish, and that's not always a bad thing, right? Selfish has a bad connotation to it for a word. Even if I was going to donate to charity, why am I donating it? Why am I doing it? Not because I'm going to talk about it, and not because maybe I want recognition from my peers, but it fits in with my moral code. It makes me feel like I've accomplished something towards my, building up my morality and my belief system. Or else, why would I do it, right? And Ayn Rand has an entire collection of essays on this, on the virtues of selfishness. And I think it's something that a lot of folks are afraid to talk about because it's so easy to say, you can't be selfish, you have to be selfless. But I think we have a misunderstanding of the word, quite frankly. And I think if people were a bit more honest with themselves, you're not going to do something because it is going to hurt you. Nobody does. That's ridiculous, right? Even if you're going to go out of your way and sacrifice to help somebody, that again is filling part of your moral code and fulfilling part of what your belief system is, right? So in effect, you're doing it because it benefits you and making you feel good somehow inside, or making you feel like you did the right thing, or else why would you do it? And that's hard to program. That's the challenge. You can't programmatically write these things. And I think a lot of the folks that are in charge of social media platforms, they develop this godlike complex, right? Like, we control this community.
Yep.
But I think they're getting ahead of themselves. There's a complexity to the human mind that we're not even close to touching. Not even close. So it's kind of silly for them to think, and kind of arrogant to think that they can, right? And we're going to have all these changing sentiments and words like you were talking about earlier. Like, I remember in the 80s, something radical was great. But that might not translate these days, right? That's a little passe, a little behind the times, right? Now take those types of subtleties in the English language and bring them all to all the various different languages and all the dialects of the languages and regional sayings across the globe. And think of how quickly they change. We got a lot of work to do before we can program that stuff accurately and accordingly. I just think that the folks that are in charge of a lot of these data platforms and social media communities need to understand where their own limits are and their ability to do this.
So where does blockchain fit into this? Because are the next generation social media platforms, are they now, because we're all being brainwashed through our own conditioning biases in the echo chambers of chat rooms, are they just going to be able to maintain their dominance, or are there going to be new platforms, in your opinion, that will be able to successfully break through? And will those also be centralized platforms, or will it be a move more towards a decentralized, so that it's not controlled by a small group of people that have a God complex?
Well, I'll tell you where, I don't know the exact answer, but I can kind of point you in the right direction on this. Blockchain, to me, has the potential to solve the global trust deficit because trust is built into the protocol.
Global trust.
And I think that that's a great pathway for people to start to realize and have a better understanding of how their data is being monetized. And not just like their personal data, like, my name is so-and-so, I live in this area, I check that I have this job, I went to these schools, but their interactive data. I think once people get an idea of like how much their interactive data is being monetized, blockchain serves as a pathway for you to be able to pick and choose and to be able to monetize that based on your own preferences and have you be the recipient of that monetization. And I think once people have a better economic incentive, then you're going to see a lot more trust be built into the community. Because right now, I'm playing on my phone, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and by default, these types of interactions I'm having, I'm subconsciously giving away my data to experience this. But I think that most people, like the vast majority of users, don't really fully grasp how they could really monetize themselves and their interactive data. And blockchain provides a path. And I think once we're able to do that to a degree, and I know, Robert, you've talked about this a lot, then you'll see an economic model and a business model behind everyone's interaction, rather than having it drilled down from above from the platform. I think that once we decentralize those types of actions and everyone's incentivized on their own accord and on their own preferences, then I think you'll start to see trust circulate out through that network.
Absolutely. No, I could not agree with you more. I think people don't. Do you think people don't know the value that their data is being monetized for?
I think people, you know what?
And they don't know how it works.
Everyday people, like, look, we're in this world all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we think about this.
Right.
Everyday people, they know it's monetized, they hear about it, but they're not paying attention. And I think we need to get them to pay attention. I think if we put an economic incentive behind it, people start to pay attention.
Or if you're losing something also, that's another thing people start to pay attention to.
Right.
Go ahead,
right.
No, they do. I also think it's too ethereal for the average person, right? Because they don't really know what data they're giving up, right? They got my name, what I clicked on.
All the data, all the data and connections.
Psychographic stuff they don't realize they're actually copying up. And that's the thing. And, it's like, I don't know if you guys have watched The Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
Right? Most people I know who've seen it, they get appalled. Like, I didn't know they knew this about me, and they're doing this with my data. But then I asked the question, like, well, did you delete your social media accounts? Well, no. And so even if you tell them or help them try to understand the value or what data is actually being collected, I think there's this kind of implicit covenant going on, saying like, well, I get connected with my friends and I get this content. I mean, as long as nothing bad happens, I guess I'm okay with that.
Well, there's also not much choice for them either, right? There's not another place where their friends are, where they could go. I mean, I think if that were the choice to be made,
that's the biggest
where
one.
They could go on one platform where their data is not mined in like a data plantation, and the other platform would be decentralized versus a centralized control, and one that doesn't have quite as much or any at all, preferably censorship. If they had that choice, I think they would make that choice. A lot more people would, but we've got monopolies, right? Facebook is a monopoly. Let's call it for what it is.
No, that's exactly right, Robert. And like, that's something that gets glossed over a lot, is people are afraid to call back and rally some of the antitrust laws that we've had on the books for a very long time. Nobody wants to have this discussion seriously in Washington, but that's exactly what it is. It's a monopoly. And we have mechanisms to address that, but we just refuse to use them right now because the lobbyist groups and the special interest groups are too entrenched with the policymakers.
But we're definitely seeing a trend right now where people are leaving Facebook, Instagram, and setting up large Telegram accounts. Right?
It's a good trend. It's a great trend, but that's a lot of catch up to do. It's a significant amount of catch up to do. Facebook has a large, like enormous, like not first mover advantage. We had MySpace, and that which disappeared. But I, I struggle with this and wrestle with this of like, how do we be more transparent with ourselves as to what we feel is right and wrong, and where are the alternatives, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like
and
this
it
a
depends
lot.
too, because like across these different platforms you're having different conversations. Facebook for me, that's where I can post pictures of my kids and people love them.
Right.
Instagram is where I'm taking pictures of the food I cook. LinkedIn is where I'm posting things of my professional development. Twitter is where I'm being being a little bit more edgy. But I think that's pretty consistent across the board. So like, I think we are struggling to discover really like viable alternatives. I'm glad Telegram has seen the success it has, but it does have limitations. So I think once we start to address it societally as the monopoly that it is, perhaps that some of these alternatives will start to emerge.
Okay, well, what about Apple's recent foray attempt, I guess, into getting access to everyone's iPhotos, right?
Oh,
Which
actually,
was a
Robert,
major departure. When I saw that, I was like, wait, what? I mean,
Yeah,
Apple
think
has always
different, right?
been this paragon of virtue that has always protected privacy, and then all of a sudden they do an about face, and I couldn't figure it out, and I was kind of stunned by the whole thing. But I'd love to hear your viewpoints on this.
You know, it was funny. Yesterday on the radio, I heard a DJ, and I thought about this exact same thing. Say, Apple's just come out with a notification that they have discovered a new vulnerability across all their devices, and that you need to update immediately so you're not vulnerable. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is totally, because this is a total like PR mechanism because of this exact issue of being able to access your photos. Access, I mean, who knows where it's going to stop? It's not going to stop your photos, I can tell you that. But I think that's Apple's way of assigning liability elsewhere, quite frankly. And it's taking us down a slippery slope of making the company a little bit different than we thought it might have been. But that's our own bias. That's our own conditioning bias, Robert. We had this vision of what Apple is. And, companies change like people do, and they evolve for better or for worse. And I think that we need to sort of accept that the mantras and the values that were there when the company was founded are not exactly the same as they are now.
And that's another aspect of it. I think that's something that's kind of nice about a blockchain, right? Because blockchain is immutable, so you can't change history. You can't go back and say no, that's not what I meant. You can't do like Google, where they say before they had this, whoever would have a mission statement and sort of a credo that would include the words don't be evil, but they kind of bounced the don't be evil, right? And they really super de-emphasized it, right, in all of their new stuff. So but if you have don't be evil in your blockchain, it's always there. It's never going away. So there seems to be some solidity in that concept in and of itself. And maybe that provides some degree of promise or hope for the future. But, I think this is becoming the norm rather than the exception, that we tend to use a crowbar like Apple did. The crowbar here was pedophilia, right? So they know that the Democrat side of the ledger is not going to be against them necessarily, because they don't seem to care as much about their data. Maybe not, obviously that's a blanket statement, and it's not something that would apply to everybody. But that's certainly not been, they seem to be more pro censorship, more pro, let's make sure that the messaging about, the science is correct, related to COVID in particular. And I think that has been the powder keg that's been a catalyst for all of these weirdisms that are now happening, right? It feels very dystopian and sort of, like I'm reading out of Ayn Rand's, Atlas Shrugged, or out of 1984, or watching the film, V for Vendetta, right? Where everything is done for the public good, right? But that freaks me out, because I know enough about history to know that the term, as soon as someone starts saying, we're going to do this for the public good, that's usually the entree to genocide. That's usually the entree to mass racism.
Historically, it hasn't played out very well, has it?
It never has. It literally never has. So that starts to get my alarm bells going. Wait, what? What is going on here now? And we need to speak out, because just like my father told me, I said, Dad, is this free? Can we go there for free? And he said, son, nothing in this life worth anything is free, not even freedom.
Beautiful.
So at some stage, we all have to be willing to speak out and voice our thoughts on this and how we're feeling about it. Because if we don't, believe me, this could be, especially with this brainwashing that we're actually going through, what has been described of echo chambers, that is a form of brainwashing. No doubt about it. We get stuck on our own dopamine hit of what we already believed.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I don't know,
And there's a business,
I've
it's
changed
the
my
business
mind
model.
a lot of times in life. I've changed my mind. I've said, hey, I like the right to be able to change how I view something. Something that happened to me that was very bad earlier in my life. Now I look back and say, gee, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it took the perspective of time for me to fully appreciate that reality.
Right.
Right. But I don't want that taken away from myself. Right. I don't want that ability, to be gone.
This is so nice.
So it's the same thing. I want to be able to listen to opposing viewpoints. I want to be able to have my mind be open to changing and to adjusting, right? But organizationally, I can see how that becomes kind of problematic, because now you've got someone who said, oh, I'm all for non-censorship and we're all about protecting data privacy, and like Tim Cook. And now all of a sudden about face. But then really the reality is this: is it maybe what's impacting his thinking? Possibly that they're facing a huge saturation of iPhone sales.
This is very good.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's all economically driven, right? You're in this echo chamber because it's easily monetized. And there's a business model that drives your cyclical ride through those types of echo chambers. Oh, I like fishing. And then all of a sudden you get like all sorts of like Bass Pro Shop ads and like all sorts of new tackles and lures, and like boom, 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 you're clicking. Maybe you buy something. And that's the same with ideas too. And, that's where I really believe that blockchain is a pathway to this. Once you start to realize that you can monetize these a bit more on your own and get the reward and experience it for yourself, then it really is a game changer. But yeah, right now, Apple, this is like the same thing with you remember those old school refrigerators that used to have like the curved corners? That company went out of business because they never broke, right? So they had to transition to service as opposed to like product sales. And Mercedes ran into this problem in the 70s. Their cars were so well manufactured, they never broke, and they almost went out of business because they couldn't make new cars. Now, Apple's not going to dial back the quality of their iPhone, but they'll realize they've reached this point of saturation, and they have to figure out ways of monetizing their user base other than hardware sales, right? So, yeah, at the end of the day, it's all going to be what is driving the business model.
Does not
Neil,
be.
what did you think when you heard about the Apple crowbar?
The same thing. I mean, I get the thing with the spyware and the update, but it's not shocking, right? Was it like 3-4 years ago, all these celebrities with the new photos, and they thought they had deleted them, and Apple had copies of them?
Right.
And apparently the employees had access to them, and that's how they got back out. I think a lot of people were like, whoa, well, that's I don't think
We do this. That's the thing.
And I think to enact the
But
change
when
that
is it
we're
going to
talking
go
about,
right into the
it
surface?
can't be okay
and be
until something goes
conscious.
wrong. You have to not be okay with it.
Sure.
We have to be able to take control of our data. This, again, where blockchain can really come in. And it's the same thing. Even they're like, well, we're using these machine learning algorithms and just really managing things. You could use blockchain to at least keep a record of the types of data and the training you gave to it. So if you did encounter a thing like block anything that says gorilla in it, there's that indelible record to show us like, wait a second, maybe you took this too far. So I really think a lot of the things we're talking about, I think most people know it's not quite right. They may not know what to do about it, but we have to make a conscious choice as society to actually tackle and try and address it. Otherwise, it's going to just get worse and worse. I mean, the level of information that these companies know about it now, it's absolutely, the large trash bags and 2 gallons of milk a week, they know this guy's got 2 kids at home between the ages of 11 and 17, right? Just from those purchases.
Yeah, you can reverse engineer this in really scary ways.
Yeah.
To get a consumer profile. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's the solution here, guys? What do you think? I mean, and how does blockchain one of the things that I look at blockchain and say, after I really dove deep into understanding, because I didn't really fully grok it until I grokked it, after I learned what the word grok meant. But the truth is, I looked at it finally and said, wow, this is a referendum process.
Referendum.
It's a referendum process that requires no representation. So, a lot of people think we live in a democracy. We don't. We live in a republic. This is, it's a republic built on democratic principle. We don't vote for issues. We vote for people that we believe are entrusted to represent our perspectives and issues. But the truth is, the lobbies are too powerful. And I've spent a lot of time in Washington. I've spent a lot of time, lobbying congressmen, senators. I've met them many, many times. I think at one point I probably met almost every single senator and every congressman in over a 2-year period. What that does is it shows me exactly how the system really works. And that was pretty shocking, but it is a fact that lobby firms have an inordinate amount of control over the narrative, the dialogue, the everything. We all think that, it's congressmen that write bills. Newsflash, it's not. It's companies that write bills.
It's the 25-year-old
They
staffers.
get modified by the chiefs of staff or the team that works for the congressman, but the original draft, the flavor, the everything, and they have to be miles wide and a centimeter deep on anything. So they don't really know the details of topics. They decide, okay, this is gonna be good for my constituency. So, okay, let's have the lobby firm write this bill with their outside law firm. And that's who writes the bill. And then in the end, it goes to the congressman or senator, and then they introduce the bill. I know because I've introduced bills before. I've done this before. And I was stunned at the whole process. Then what happens is it gets whittled down and chopped, and it's like a complete negotiation, balagan, as they would say in Israel. It's like this total battle over, what special interest is going to get this and who's going to get their back scratched here. And it's a mess. It's a total mess. But blockchain seems to avoid all of that. Goes straight to a referendum process. And there's nobody in central control of it.
No, absolutely. And I think it's going to start from the ground up, Robert. At the end of the day, it's going to take strong leadership. And I would love to see a day where we had blockchain voting. Imagine that.
Absolutely.
Immutable blockchain voting. Now, is that going to happen overnight? Of course not. People are going to freak out. No way. But see this at the grassroots with local officials, with local politicians. I think you'll start to see a groundswell. Things we do well here in the United States is we do things well when we start at the community level and at the state level, and then they filter up. That's where we have our best success, when things grow up rather than be brought down upon us. So I think there's a lot of promise, right? We have a lot of very specific blockchain empowering legislation and laws in states like Wyoming, cryptocurrency mayor in Miami, and I only see those numbers growing. And we're so very early that within the next decade or so, we might have a viable chance of having someone run for president that has a good chance of winning or being a major party nominee who really understands it, right? But it's going to take this continued work at the ground level to make that a reality. Like once we start to see successes with, citizenry as a service, to a degree. The way I get my permit to build something on my land, the way I pay my local taxes, right? The way I deal with licensing, like all of these each other's success level. And I think that's probably a much more attainable methodology of seeing blockchain really integrated in our society rather than a top-down measure. It's not going to start at the federal government. It's going to come up.
So actually, I have a question about that, though. I mean, let's say there were a candidate who ran for president who was, against the current methods, right, for extracting data and monetizing it on the part of companies. Would that president even be able to get elected would that president even be able to, potential president, even be able to get on the soapbox? Because he would be blocked
maybe
from access to
we had a game show host as president not long ago.
Right, exactly. So, but that's because he was able to circumnavigate his own party by having 80 million Twitter followers. If he didn't have those 80 million Twitter followers, the Republican Party would have never let him go that far.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, look, I'm not a huge fan of political parties to begin with. Hopefully, we can get it to a point where we start to divest ourselves out of this bipolarity, right? Because it's really it creates schizophrenia, like societal schizophrenia with this type of two-party system we have, which is ridiculous. So that's another possible potential benefit of blockchain is we start to break down the barriers of our polarization, and it's either you're a Democrat or a Republican. That's ridiculous. Washington warned about this really early, and it's too bad that we haven't heeded those warnings.
But I think this goes to this again. A lot of this is a people problem, right? I totally get with the grassroots, but again, people have to make a conscious, decision in their mind, realize that we have a problem and we need to try and fix it. Because the system and the infrastructure as is isn't designed. The government's not designed to be efficient, right? And they're not going to go look for efficiency. Yeah. They're not going to go look for those efficiencies. And you have people that have been in power for so long, they're not incentivized to bring in changes that might, threaten their ability to fundraise, keep their office, get reelected, all these things. And I think that's why it has to start. I'll tell you a real quick story. I taught a law class a couple of years ago, and I won't name names, but the state senator for the state, there's an issue and you're using AI machine learning, you have to disclose some details about the data and the training you used, right? Because it's such a black box. And it was just something happens. There's, as soon as that bill hit the docket, it's like in subcommittee, the lobbyists got word of it and boom, just ran it over, right? Didn't really care what was in the bill or not. We're saying it's threatening trade secrets. It's going to put companies out of business, and you know how it works. Where the money flows is what's one-on-one happening. And so the bill kind of died on the vine. My students, it was unfortunately a really great learning experience for them because they thought, hey, this is it'll be a good thing. It'll help people. They didn't realize the politics that would get involved. But that's the challenge we face, right? Is one, do we think this is a problem? And two, do most people know just how the system actually works today to realize what we have to do to overcome those hurdles?
Yeah, no, I could not agree with you more. So going back to blockchain for just a moment.
He's just coming back to blockchain.
Then that, this whole NFT craze has gone nuts, right? Everyone's like, I can't believe people are buying, stuff for millions of dollars of copyable artwork, which is kind of mind blowing. Yep. It's the value of the original, right? That this was the original. That kind of it seems to be the attraction here. Maybe you can explain this a little bit, John.
Well, in the art world, art is one thing. It's one type of NFT. It's art, but it's bigger than that, right? And the art world's kind of funny anyway. I can take a banana and take some duct tape, stick it on my wall too, but it's not going to sell for a couple $1 million like it did in Miami a few years ago, right? But what it does, it provides a level of authenticity. NFTs do, and it provides a level of establishing a monetizable community around your product or your brand, right? So like trading cards, that's such a natural fit. We understand trading cards, and there was a whole little submarket for these as we grew up with baseball cards, basketball cards. To have those evolve into the NFT space is a natural progression. Totally. Same thing with brand quality. Same thing. I always felt that the pathway to large-scale consumer adoption of crypto would be through consumer rewards programs. And consumer rewards programs are effectively NFTs, right? Where you have status, you have a level, you have a membership, hierarchy or special privileges based on points you accumulate. So I think that's a natural pathway. So I'm really happy the NFT phenomenon has gone the way it has. And I really do see that as a path to large-scale adoption.
So basically you can NFT anything then, right? So then I guess you could NFT patents, you could NFT copyrights, you could NFT a film you make or whatever.
You got athletes NFTing themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So athletes NFTing themselves. What is that? How do you do that? What does that mean?
That's like their fan club, and like through these tokens, you dictate sort of like your membership levels.
Wow. So basically, do you see a day then that people, at the celebrity level, en masse, will be NFTing themselves?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They already are.
Yeah. they already
Social
are.
tokens.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? I think it's a natural progression. It's the same thing as saying, like, I have a brand and this is my logo. But now it's represented in a digital certificate. That's all.
Right. So I have believed this as well. So that means that people then, even everyday people, could NFT their own data.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And
then it will be what, Burning Planet? Tell me.
do you know anybody who's built a platform like that?
I heard of a guy. Believe it or not.
Oh,
I heard of a guy.
Which guy?
Robert.
Tell me the name.
Absolutely. No, I do believe. I think it's actually return to sovereignty for the individual. I believe that government exists to serve at the consent of the governed. So it's we, the people, that give our consent to be governed. And we have a responsibility. We have an absolute obligation to speak out and to do something about it when all of a sudden we see tyranny and we see things that are just absolutely messed up. And we have a responsibility and a right to try to do our best to correct that, whatever we believe that thing is. Again, I don't necessarily agree with everybody. I don't. I can't. But I definitely will fight for their right to say it. And I do believe that people should be able to say it. Right now, it's different. It's like they should be able to say it in public forums. They should be able to say it, but not necessarily coming to my house and be screaming at me in my house all day long either. Right? That's a different thing. But I don't think that they should be expunged from society altogether. It just doesn't feel right. And I believe that fundamentally, once people understand that we've all been living and working on a digital data plantation, that we will start to figure out that, gee, maybe we can have our own data sovereignty, and that will actually help us to bring balance back to the concept of democracy. It doesn't mean that it replaces government.
Thanks
It just
for
means that maybe we can
promoting
start
me.
putting it into effective use. I waited yesterday in line for 2 hours to vote in the California recall election. And it was interesting because the people around me were all, they overheard me talking about math on the telephone. I was on the phone while we waited there for 2 hours. And they said, geez, are you into mathematics or cryptography or whatever? And I said, yes. And they said, well, tell us all about this. I was shocked that all the people in the line, it was Newport Beach, though,
Amazing.
knew everything about blockchain and everything already. I was like totally stunned.
Right.
So there were some experts in the line.
Cool.
So I was like, wow, that's kind of
This is great.
But it didn't take very long before people started saying, well, I came to vote here today because I heard rumors also that people have gone to vote in California and they go to the counter and they say, you've already voted. Right? And so that was actually the discussion, that there is that much distrust of our voting system today and its own integrity that people are actually talking about it in the line. And I can tell you, everybody in that line had total antipathy for the government. It was unbelievable. So I cannot see how things can just continue to go the way they are. I just saw a survey that says something like 37% of the United States population would consider, right, a different governance model altogether. That was just like
that's
mind-blowing.
Pluto return
I'm
there.
American through and through, but I have never felt the way that I feel right now, which is, geez, maybe I should consider moving to a different country. I've lived
We're well overdue for a constitutional convention.
It is there. So definitely what we did at Crown Sterling is we built a platform so that people can create their own NFTs of whatever it is they want to NFT. We never house any data, so we never can go back and check it. And in our first Genesis block, it states right there, your data is your intangible personal property. It is not ours. It's not anybody else's. And therefore, it's protected by the U.S. Constitution, by the Bill of Rights in Articles 4 and 5, as well as the United Nations Charter for Human Rights and the European Union's as well. So I believe that this is a big moment. We stand on a precipice right now where we as citizens must stand up for our rights and freedoms. Government was built, it exists to protect the individual. We don't have a Bill of Rights for the common good because they realize that the individual Bill of Rights that we have for individuals is the common good. Thank you very much, you guys. It's been a pleasure to have you with me today. I respect both of you immensely, and I know you're both expert in your fields, and thank you for taking your time to spend with us today.
Oh, thank you very much, Robert. Thank you very much, Neil. It's been fantastic.
This was my pleasure. This was a fantastic conversation, guys.
Okay, I want to hear from this person. Right?
And good evening and welcome everyone to another one of our live AMA crypto sessions here at Sarsen Funds. My name is Ivan Dimo. I'll be host for the evening. And joining me tonight is Jahan Jamali, our CMO and co-founder of Sarsen Funds.
Thank you very much, Ivan. And I'm thrilled to be hosting one of these AMA sessions once again. Tonight's going to be a really special session for us. I'm really excited. We have a special guest, Robert Grant from Crown Sterling, who is, I'm going to say it, Robert, one of the smartest individuals I've ever encountered, and unbelievably engaging in the way in which he can translate some very complex concepts about the state of our society, the state of our personal sovereignty, and the future and what it might hold, as we start to enter this new digital age. So I want to be the first to say, Robert, thank you and welcome for coming on today.
Jahan, always a pleasure to see you. You're one of the most dynamic people I know.
Dynamic.
And I'm very excited for this conversation and cannot wait to hear what all you want to talk about and all the comments and questions that we get from the crowd as well.
Oh, well, fantastic. I'm thrilled. I've been looking forward to this now since for the last couple of weeks. So what I wanted to do, though, I wanted to get folks oriented to where our conversation is going to go. And one of your life passions has been to, not only be a proponent, but a practitioner and a trailblazer in this concept of personal data sovereignty and self-sovereignty. So I wanted to just turn it over to you for a little bit, and if we could maybe just give our audience, because some of them might be very new to this concept of what is personal data sovereignty and self-sovereignty, and why is it important?
So, as I kind of think about this topic, I think it's literally becoming very rapidly the most important topic in the world right now. Because this is going to be relative to how we conduct democracy, how we live in free societies, how we operate, whether there's going to be censorship or not. And actually, it speaks to the very nature of who we are as individuals.
Nice.
Data has now become an extension of who we are as people. That's very different because it didn't exist that way before. And I'm in the process of writing a book right now that we just decided to name Information Plantation. What we don't know in this world today is that what has grown up around us with all the digital changes and new technologies and everything that's happened, all of us on social media, is that we are being mined, just like in the movie The Matrix, for data, except it's not energy. See, in that film, they got it wrong. It was right, but it was wrong in that it wasn't energy, it was data. Now, I could make an argument from a physics standpoint that data and information are kind of, and as well as energy, are kind of all synonymous. We can, have them be interchangeable.
Right.
But what this means today is that we've already known since 1997 when they cloned Dolly the sheep, that people can be cloned, right? And I don't know about you, but I have been.
What about the leathers today?
Have you had identity theft, John?
Yeah, I have, unfortunately.
And how was that for you?
I mean, you totally feel taken advantage of. It's gut-wrenching.
It's gut-wrenching. And not only that, I called the police station, right? Because that's what I was told to do. I need to file a police report. And what do you think they told me? Oh, we don't do that.
Oh,
We don't do that. So am I supposed to call the FBI?
of course.
And I knew exactly where my identity was stolen from. I was in a hotel in Miami, and they took my key from my room and sold that key to somebody, and all that information on the key was on there, and so they stole my identity.
Wow.
And next thing I know, I had all kinds of bills from T-Mobile and stuff. I never had a T-Mobile account. So the point I realized at that moment was, wait a minute, I can do nothing about this. My identity is now gone. And wait a minute, in the future, in a dystopian style future, who's to stop anyone from even being able to take one of my strands of hair that I leave anywhere? And, you know, hopefully I won't be losing my hair anytime soon. But if I lose one here or there, someone could take that and actually clone my body, clone who I am. So then what is the essence of who I am? Experiences and my memories, right? It's the things that I do. It's my search history. It's all the things that I'm doing both digitally and in reality.
Okay.
And in the future, that is going to be tantamount to who we are as individuals, day in and day out. I see a day in the not too distant future where we'll have to have some form of digital identification that everyone, and some people are going to go, wait, that sounds like, you know, Revelation in the Bible. Well, at the end of the day, it's going to end up being necessary that we have some mechanism to prove who we say we are, because otherwise we won't have a mechanism to do it. So, but wait a minute. If all of these things like my search history, the people that I'm interacting with on social media, my habits of purchasing, as well as my attitudinal shifts, as well as behavioral data and all of that, if that's not owned by me, then who owns it?
Right. And like one of the things too, I don't think people realize, Robert, is who does own that data that's being collected now? I mean, everybody knows that web platforms and social media platforms are monetizing data, but I don't really think it really hits folks like the types of data, the passive amounts of data, and the multiples by which this is already being monetized.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, please go and watch Social Dilemma on Netflix, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about here. Your data is now being sold.
Ooh.
If you're participating on any kind of social media platform or even just visiting companies on the internet, there are beacons that are attached to you. You don't even know it necessarily. Those cookies that are getting attached to you. And all of your data is being monetized, either aggregated up or individually, and being sold to other parties. Now, that market today is already 5,000 companies that just broker it. 5,000 companies broker your data. And you don't even realize that this is not really any different than your blood. Let's say that you're in college and you're broke, like I was broke in college. And my friends were like, should we go sell some blood plasma, right? Well, there's value in your blood. Well, what's different now is that, like, this isn't like vampires taking your blood and you waking up in the morning and saying, oh, I have like marks on my neck. These are vampires that left no marks, that you let them in the front door, and they're literally taking your value from you, and you don't know how valuable it is.
Hits.
That
Really
industry
hits,
today
Robert.
is over $250 billion a year. It's the fastest growing industry on the planet. And today, data is now the most valuable asset known to man. So you might say, well, wait a minute, how could data be the most valuable asset? It's not, you know, it's not scarce. It's infinite. We get more and more data every day. So then you have to ask yourself the question, well, what's driving the value attribution for it? And it's really the control of data that is valuable. And if you don't have control over your own data in the future, we're all going to be in a very, very different world. And we're already seeing elements of a dystopian reality in, you know, things like forced mandates. And, you know, I was vaccinated, but I'll say this, I don't believe in a forced mandate structure at all. I just can't. To me, that's sort of antithetical to the whole way we see life. And all of these things are now being challenged. So all of this data, your health data, your information for insurance companies, all of this stuff is now being aggregated up and sold up for billions of dollars. And other parties are making money off it. That's why we're calling our book Information Plantation. We don't even know it, but we're on a plantation and we're harvesting information, but we don't, as original producers, actually have ownership claim to it in the current paradigm. So what right, go ahead.
Robert, let me ask, so do you think just most people are oblivious to it or are making that subconscious trade in their head for like, okay, I get a new experience or I get access to a new app.
Got flowers.
Do you think they don't have
What a good sign.
sort of a perspective on the amount of monetization that's occurring just on their usage and data collection?
Italy.
I
Not
don't think
surprised.
they know.
Ooh.
I think if Facebook, there's already been data that's been published on this. If Facebook had to write a check to everybody for just the amount of money they make off the data sale, right? It's like $600 last year that they'd have to write you a check for. That's the total revenue off. It's not their profit because they have costs, et cetera, off of that as well. But it's growing at double every year. It's doubling every single year. So when you think about it, that's one company. Never mind all the other companies that have such a horrible system right now of protecting your data, whether it's all these high profile hacks that have happened very recently or ransomware that's happening right now, right? People are getting their data stolen every day also on top of it. So the value that can be associated with this, we don't really have a clue about. And so one of the things I think that's so critical about all of this is how we need to raise awareness of this exact issue and what the value is that we're missing, right? It's like we're all working on this plantation and we don't even know that, we're creating all this value that's turning into true monetization for, the tenant farm that we've become the tenant farmers of.
It has. And, one of the things that are, strikes me as sort of one of the obvious obstacles is that, this sort of challenges
gotten to Prince.
some really powerful institutions. And, we have a lot of dynamic change happening in the world right now, especially in terms of finance and even how the world is organized. But how does control over the data really become a game changer in shifting this paradigm?
So, okay, let me give you an example. We're not that far away. Already in Europe, there are already vaccination passports. They already exist. We're not at the stage yet where it's required for all travel, but, I don't think a day is very far away that it will eventually be required for travel. I went to Africa not a few years ago, and I had to show all my vaccinations to get my ability to get into Botswana. So I could see this, and if you don't have it, they'll bounce you. You can't go to places. In Australia, they just announced that they're going to say, look, if you don't have vaccination cards to prove that you've been vaccinated, then you're not even allowed to conduct commerce with other parties that are vaccinated. What? Are you kidding me? I'm not even talking about in person. I'm just talking about conducting commerce in general.
Wow.
There are some very bizarre things that are happening right now. And all of this data is going to be known and understood. And if we don't have a mechanism, and this is one example of it, but as we look further down the road, what other things are going to be like that? So if all of a sudden, you want to get health insurance, right, on top of whatever government insurance we may have access to. So what, if you've ever smoked a cigarette, they're going to know, or they're going to know who you've ever met with because it's all data that's been tracked on your phone. And they'll know that, oh, you were exposed to this person. Let me tell you something. The same exact thing happened with me. We got a call. I ended up having COVID last year, right? Which, by the way, is probably the very best vaccination you can get. But, I don't recommend it to people to try. It was definitely a harrowing week. For 7 days, I was very concerned about it. But I'll say this, that we got a call from the state of California not long after that saying that they knew who we'd been exposed to. How? Where's all that data coming from?
Mm-hmm.
So do we live in a dystopian sort of like, Handmaid's Tale world? And I think that there's got to be mechanisms to protect data and privacy and its ownership. And ownership is the answer. Lots of companies have tried to make it around privacy and have tried to protect data through privacy. Privacy laws are not very strong. Ownership laws are very strong. So what we did at Crown Sterling is we pulled together a group of experts, including Brittany Kaiser and Jody Westby and former Congressman Ed Royce, and came up with a data sovereignty or data bill of rights. And that bill of rights pegs exactly into this notion of ownership. Because we believe that data is the intangible personal property of the original producer. And therefore, it's protected by the U.S. Constitution. It's protected by the United Nations Charter. It's protected by the European Union. They're already clearly defined as what ownership rights are, and ownership is a basic human right. Ownership of property. Privacy is not listed as a basic human right.
Right.
So,
I mean, then again, we have all sorts of different definitions in different regions for what is private, what should be private, and what's not. So we live in this dynamic change, right, where we're seeing this movement towards decentralization of a lot of different aspects, particularly obviously in the digital asset and finance space. We talked earlier about how control over data really is what can help assign part of the value, is your ability to keep it secure or control it. Where does blockchain fit into this, right? Because if you have laws and ownership laws, they're only so good as the systems that can help make or enforce those. So centralized systems, are they the future for this? Or is blockchain the pathway? Or how is blockchain maybe potentially the pathway for this type of personal data sovereignty?
I think to answer that question, I'd like to go back in history a little bit, if you'll indulge me.
Absolutely.
Right. So if you think about how money got to be money, right? And of course, precious metals were sort of the original form of money. And why was that? Well, because as a practical matter, right, you could keep gold in your castle, and gold is heavy. It's got a lot of mass, right? So if someone wants to steal it, they're not going to get very far. They can only carry as much as they probably weigh. You can't do much more than that. And at that, you won't get very far rapidly, right? Because you're going to have something to carry that. And so that presents a different kind of challenge. So you put your gold in your castle, and another party is going to come and try to steal it. They have to bring an army with them, or at least some mercenary group to try to get it from you. And then everyone's there got to die, because you're not going to get very far if you're thinking you're going to get away with it, right? So gold is practical from that perspective. It's heavy, and it holds, it's a good store of value. Well, when you think about it, all that went away in 1973.
Specifically.
1973 brought with it Bretton Woods, where Nixon advocated this. And what was happening is we had something called Keynesian economics that was going on then, which was said, okay, how do we smooth out all these election cycles so that we don't end up having to have all these wild swings and put the countries into depressions or deep recessions right during election cycles whenever there's a lot of uncertainty. So what they came up with is a concept beyond just fiscal spending, because the way to get out of these problems, these peaks and troughs before, was through things like fiscal spending. And the best way was through wars, candidly. And all of a sudden you have a massive influx of government spending. And so that would become a stimulus. Well, with Keynesian economics, as well as, Miller Modigliani, all these researchers, economists did all this work and said, well, we should be looking at things like monetary policy. And monetary policy is a better way to smooth out the economy. We're going to play with the price of money by increasing liquidity. So the price of money is the interest rate. So if the interest rate's higher, then the price of your money is more expensive. If the interest rate's lower, then it's cheaper, right? And so you can use that interest rate to increase liquidity into society. You can print more money also.
Right.
And so
let me ask you a question, Robert. Let me just opine on this for a second. Then we have a bunch of questions that have come in, so I do want to make sure that we get some of them answered. So, you talked about removing from the gold standard, and effectively, also this is during the time where we had our oil, big oil crisis.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks can make the argument that effectively what we created was a petrodollar, where OPEC and oil trade was restricted to being done with the U.S. dollar. And oil was fueling the world. It was fueling the economic growth, and it was that current and that like I said, the fuel. Now, if data is going to be what drives us ahead, and we've already I've talked earlier about how it's fueling a substantial amount of growth and is becoming the most important thing in the world, then to me it almost seems like a natural evolution to have a currency be backed or be riding off of data itself and the immutability of it, which is where I think cryptocurrency really has its strongest foundation.
That is well said. Because when you think about it, since 1973, what has backed the US dollar? And this would have never been possible to get rid of a global peg on currency that existed until 1973. Until that time, the German mark was fixed against the dollar, the Japanese yen, the peso. They were all fixed. But as soon as they got rid of the peg against gold, then all the currencies floated, right? Well, that worked because we lived in a post-World War II era that was called hegemonic stability. So if you look at political science and international relations, which I know you're an advocate of, as well as, definitely an aficionado in that field, hegemonic stability meant that you had a superpower. Maybe you could argue one superpower or two superpowers. What we're seeing right now is the crumbling of all government. We're seeing right now all government and centralized systems are literally collapsing on their own weight. Now, this isn't only happening with government, it's also happening with any institution that has self-appointed themselves as the ultimate arbiter of what is real and what is fake in their world. Right? You could say,
what is real? Textiles, my
with,
loves.
Textiles. Sort of like organized religion. They're going through the toughest time ever.
Very real. Look at us.
You could say this is true also with education and universities, which just came off this massive scandal where we all know that this has always been sort of a fixed game. And Wall Street is next. Wall Street, the reason why crypto has done so well in part is because you can't play with it the way that Wall Street has been played with. I just was complaining today about an IPO process for companies. It is so geared to benefit large investors. And we have all these laws that are supposed to be set up to protect the little guy when actually they're raping the little guy. That is just the fact of it. And I would say it to anybody. And I've seen it and I've experienced it myself many times now. And I won't be convinced otherwise because I've literally seen it happen. So what I think is happening right now is the only thing that has backed the dollar since Bretton Woods was gone, right? Since we had the Bretton Woods conference in '73 is encryption. Because think about it, you have a ledger that's centralized. You have money in your bank account, but what is it that protects that money? Well, it's really only the encryption, which is called a specific type of encryption, public key cryptography. Public key cryptography is what has been backing our dollar. It's what's been backing all money. And it makes sense that becomes a very important aspect of value attribution. Why? Because if your encryption doesn't work, then how can you claim that there's value to the underlying asset? Because someone could just take it. We only have dollars on a centralized ledger that is digital, right? It's not like there's real dollars that are backing that up necessarily. There's certainly not gold that backs it up and no other precious metal. It's the encryption that becomes the backing for it. And we're about to go through a massive sea change because of quantum computing related to that also.
Tell me more.
So Robert, I wholeheartedly agree. And I want to talk about quantum computing and the threat it poses in a moment. But let's talk about, because I want to take a couple of questions from the audience. Let's talk about control and just taking data. Apple. We got a question here from Jack. Why
not?
How do you feel about the recent news that Apple got stopped from releasing the tracking software or the image scraping software that they packaged up as a child abuse mechanism? I think that's a very warranted topic because it opened up, it certainly would open up a lot of Pandora's box of a lot of issues.
It definitely does. And, I was extremely disappointed because I've been a fan of Apple for a long time. And this was the first time that I literally was like, oh, man, because you can argue with whatever you want
it got too big, huh?
They reacted with the San Bernardino terrorist attack and all the stuff that happened. And they said, look, we're not going to, open up access because of terror, even though it's a terrorist activity and everything, because we know that that's a slippery slope. I was stunned when I saw that they agreed to monitor photographs. And so it's an easy crowbar, right? And we live in a world today where you got all the Republicans claiming that Democrats are
What do you mean by monitor? Literally, like what I'm doing now. You know what I mean?
Racist. It's like, enough already. I'm neither Republican nor Democrat. So I'm sitting right in the middle. I'm a libertarian, right? I will vote my conscience. I don't vote party. So what's interesting to
Okay, let's
me
get
is
out
that
of
they took
fabrics
this
for a
one
sec.
crowbar and said, okay, well, the Democrats don't seem to care so much about, personal rights and freedoms. So we don't have to worry about them. Let's go. We'll get the right side of the ledger on this one. The Republicans to agree to this by saying that, it's a crowbar to get in and get rid of all these terrible pedophiles. And so what are they going to do? They're going to say, no, I'm against stopping pedophiles? No, of course they're not going to say that, because that's going to be like reprehensible in society to do. So they use this as a crowbar to break in, and then where does it stop? The truth is, it doesn't stop. They will have access to another alternative business model because they're facing a cliff in revenue coming up in 2025, where they're anticipating that their iPhone sales will be down by approximately 30 to 70%. They need a new model. So, how convenient it is. And this is what's happened in society today. Whatever we think benefits us becomes our new ethics. And that is what I think is a real breakdown in society today. So I'm definitely against this whole thing with Apple, and I'm happy that it got stopped.
Well, I think you can say the same thing for government as a whole, right? Because we have a question I'm going to address from Dara. Government itself is sort of looking for a new business model too. And right, I think that's pretty safe to say. And do you think that government is self-aware of its crumbling nature? And you look at it collectively, right? This is social psychology 101 when you look at how a government works and operates in group psychology, looking for reasons to justify its existence.
Yeah, it's like what's my raison d'etre, right? What's my reason?
Right. And like here's the thing, stimulus money, it's really difficult to take away payments to people once you start them. And then you start to get people reliant.
It's not on chain, huh?
And once you have them ordered in systems and processes, then you've created a reason to exist. You've created a reason to continue. And I think that government's at this turning point where they're looking, collectively to justify its own existence, right? Because as we were talking about before, I'm fascinated by this concept of the network state as we move past this nation-state system, right? And the amount of information and interconnectivity that we've experienced over the last couple of decades has liberated information and knowledge to such a degree that's never been experienced before in human history, where this type of knowledge and access to info was reserved for, heads of state or captains of industry or heads of a church. And it hasn't really been democratized like it has now. And I think people are starting to obviously be more self-reliant. So my concern is, what's government's reaction going to be? I mean, government in and of itself, besides like a couple little hiccups in history, doesn't self-contract ever, no matter what the system is.
No, governments never get smaller. They only get bigger, right? Until they collapse, right? And usually on their own weight. And that's actually what we're all experiencing right now. I mean, I'm one of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of people that would sit on podcasts like this and say we're witnessing the fall of our society right now. But I don't think it's doom and gloom. I think this is good evolution. And let me speak to that. But first, I'll go back a little bit more into history, because I believe that history can teach us valuable lessons. And there were very wise people from ancient times to today that have left us great records, like Plato in his book, The Republic. So when you look at Plato's Republic, it talks about all the different forms of government, right? And when the founding fathers were establishing the United States of America, right after they signed the Declaration of Independence, they had this big problem. First of all, they had this huge issue where you have it was, of course, George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and all these guys. And so basically they couldn't get two states to agree on everything. So one of them was, actually there were three states involved that couldn't agree on everything. One was Pennsylvania, the other was New York, and the other was South Carolina. And ultimately South Carolina was the schism that led to the Civil War. Not even 100 years later. It was less than 100 years later, it led to the Civil War. So, but as they were going to be all these rebels, and we're going to send this letter, talk them, because he sent back a proclamation saying, you're all terrorists, and I'm going to have you all hanged. right? And so Benjamin Franklin famously said, well, what we couldn't do to unite ourselves, the English king just did for us. Because now, either we shall surely hang together or we will surely hang separately. And that forged and galvanized the founding fathers into finally signing, because they had no choice. They literally had no choice. So what happened after they signed the Declaration of Independence, George Washington walks out and Benjamin Franklin walks out, and a woman stops him and said, what do we have? What happened? What happened? And she said, and he looks at her and he says, Madam, we have a republic if we can keep it. Now, what does a republic mean? And this is really the form of representative democracy. Now, I was not a huge fan of blockchain until I fully grokked it. I had to first I had to grok the meaning of the word grok, but then secondly, I had to fully understand what was really going on here with blockchain, why blockchain was special. Because actually the currency that allows governments to exist without asking what's their raison d'etre is currency. It's no different really in a way than the stock of a company. If you don't have the stock of a company, then what's the company? So now you have nations like El Salvador who just announced they're flipping to Bitcoin, right? So what does that mean? How do they then enact monetary policy? How do they then enact and control fiscal policy as well, right? We already saw the European Union collapse on itself in a way and crack because they had this separation between, individual nation states had the control over fiscal policy, but therefore they didn't have to put in place austerity measures, and they had no control over their monetary policy. So that basically break between monetary and fiscal policy led to problems in Greece, where the Germans are saying, wait a minute, you guys are overspending on austerity measures. Greeks are like, no, our laws are fine, thank you very much. We don't need to do anything. The Germans are like, we're going to cut you off. What's happened now is we're in this world where when you look at blockchain, what got me super excited about it was this is the first time that I saw a governance system that didn't require more government. Now, just think about that for a moment.
Are you sure?
Every year, our government expands. In the state of California, I pay 13% tax, just in California state tax. On top of that, I'm paying a ton of tax in the federal level. If I live in New York, I'm paying New York State, New York City tax. We are taxed to high heaven right now. And it's because our government just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And with more government, it's like hiring a new marketing person. If I hire a marketing person in my company, I should expect that they're going to want to spend some money. They're going to want to deploy capital against their ideas or something. They have to show their raison d'etre. And then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. I have a friend of mine in Europe who just came to me and said, oh, his son was just appointed into this high position with the European Central Bank. And he has this job where he has to hire 350 people. And I said, well, for what? He's like, he's got to program a centralized crypto. Centralized crypto. Not decentralized, but centralized. And so I said, well, what's the plan? They said, well, they don't really have a plan on that, but they just mandated that he has to hire 350 people. And anyone who's done programming knows the more programmers you have, the less you get done.
Yeah.
It's a fact. I mean, 100%. I know, 100%.
Of course.
If you have
the more managers you have, the less you get done.
Who are great and smart programmers.
The future of companies are small.
The team of 40 will run in circles and not get anywhere. And I've seen it over and over and over again in multiple companies. I'd much rather have smaller teams because smaller teams actually get things done. By the way, it's the same with government.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So that's my point. We are now on the precipice of an age where we have a mechanism of government, right, without more government, of governance that's efficient, that doesn't require more representative democracy. I had in my office 2 very prominent senators come visit me in the last few weeks. Great guys, but let's be real. In today's world, they have to be miles and miles and miles and miles wide and a centimeter deep on anything. So they easily get manipulated by interests that are lobby firm driven, right? And I know because I've played in this space, in the healthcare space especially, right? And So what happens is they have to become not an expert, they have to know a flyer on every topic. And when you go to Washington, I've been many times, you walk through the halls of Congress, what you're going to find is it's just like when you're watching, like, you know, when we were kids, we'd watch these cartoons, conjunction, junction, what's your function, right? And then I'm a bill on Capitol Hill and all that. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. You walk in, you see all these people that are dressed like pilgrims, or you see all these people that are dressed like Native Americans, or you see all these people that are dressed, and it's kind of like that. Special interest groups are all over the place. And so what's happening is our Congress is and being lobbied at the same time. They're coming to kiss the ring of all these groups because these groups are the means through which they can run for office. They have to get money from these groups. And they get support, financial support. None of this should be legal, but it is. And in Washington, we have an old saying. If you're not at the table, then guess where you are? You're on the menu.
No, exactly.
If you're not at the table negotiating and fighting for what you believe you need, then you're going to get eaten by all the other special interest groups. So I can tell you that's the way that it is. That's the way it works. And I have participated in that system, and I can't deal with it anymore. I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's horrible. But what's happened now for the first time in our history is that our representatives know less about topics than the general public. That's what I mean by collapsing on the weight of itself. It's hit the end of it's like hit the maximum point of diminishing returns. And that's why it's about to cycle back and flip polarity. And if we're not careful, we could end up in really strange government models and control mechanisms and fascism or communism, you know, one of these two. And
or some hybrid with, you know, with the giant corporate entities and NGOs. One of the concepts, Robert,
which is really just oligarchy, communism, or fascism. That's how you can look at it.
100%.
To me, fascism is just a mask for communism, because you could not show me a single society, and I've studied a lot of this, show me one society that claimed to be communist that didn't actually end up looking, feeling, acting, smelling, and being just like fascism.
No, absolutely. And like we're you know, the lines are getting blurred, right? Between you know, corporate interests and government mechanisms and all sorts of these other types of non-governmental organizations. But one of the things I like to tell folks, because you know, I have this conversation a lot, Robert, and you know, folks know me as you know, I was a former U.S. intelligence officer, and I worked on the Hill, and you know, I take a very pro-American stance when it comes to cryptocurrency and blockchain, and you know, some of this, you know, the way in which our conversations are going now. Folks look at me like, well, are you looking for like the collapse of the United States or these types of like, you know, crazy notions? But let me point folks back to this concept. I don't know if you remember from either your high school history days or college, if you were political science or international relations guy, this concept of American exceptionalism, right? What makes America different? This was originally observed by Alexis de Tocqueville in Democracy in America in the late 1700s, where he came here from France to observe our prison systems. And, you know, there's been a couple different theories that have been thrown out. One, you know, this concept of westward expansion. We had all this manifest destiny and all these resources at our disposal. Another one was we didn't have a naturally or an organic aristocracy, right, by birthright, like they had in Europe, or nobility. We have an economic one. But, you know, if you're born a duke in Europe, you're a duke and you're, you know, part of a caste regardless. We didn't have that here necessarily in the United States. We had our own type, but it was different. But I think the most striking and telling theory of American exceptionalism, which I think can translate into an era powered by blockchain and into an era where people have transnational identities, right? I'm white, but I'm, you know, Catholic, but I'm from the Northeast, but I have relatives in Italy, and like all these other things. You have all these identifiers, and you can connect, or I'm interested in this group, and you can connect with folks in real time, right? And you can have these sort of like transnational groups of influence. But I think the concept of American exceptionalism that I think really holds true is the fact that unlike any other nation state ever, it was an idea first. Right, before it was conceived and conceptualized before it actually was birthed. And I think that is a distinguishing element in our history, which I think has, and I haven't quite pegged it out yet, I think has a lot of promise for how America can really succeed in a way that's idea and information powered on the blockchain, more so than in what you think of a physical
You got the
border.
idea, right?
So I do want to, we've.
I think you're exactly right, and to me, the two things are not mutually exclusive. So I am a fan. I love the United States. I love America. Right, but I'm also a citizen of the world. And what I would say is that loving America is not mutually exclusive to believing that we could have a better governance system. And that governance system should be one that continually evolves. For the first time in human history, we now have the ability to put in place some degree of technology to create a more decentralized system, to bring power back to the people. And for the first time, we could actually move away. I mean, you could start with the very first things, because this is going to be a multi-year trend that's going to happen. And what needs to happen is, I think voting registry needs to get blockchain. I think that there needs to be an absolute protection mechanism on making sure that you can't mess with voting, right? And here we just saw it this last cycle. I felt like I was in a third world nation or some sort of despotic regime in either, Central Africa or in Central America. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think that we can allow governance to continue and still allow freedom to ring. What has made America exceptional is its belief that the individual is what is ultimately served in society. It is only through the consent of the governed that we, the people, ever became anything as a true nation state. That's what made America special, right? That we hold these truths to be self-evident, right? That we are all created equally. But what's happened now is that we've gotten to a place where there's so much government and so much control that it doesn't even make sense for people who want to be entrepreneurs to create things or to extend on an American exceptionalism, to really do it. And for the first time in my life, I've actually thought about moving out of this country. Like, seriously, I've never ever thought, because I love this country. I love this country. So I don't think it's mutually exclusive to love this country and you also therefore have to love the government. Hell no. I don't believe that. So
let me ask you a question, Robert. So what has to happen first? Is it this type of citizen services and sort of adjustment and alterations in how we utilize blockchain at the public level? Or does the ability to, at the market level, control your own data and monetize it in a marketplace fashion, perhaps?
So
that has to happen first.
There's been a lot of talk about, and you got me a lot more passionate about this than I thought I was going to get. But there's been a lot of talk about, a universal basic income. And as a student of economics and as an entrepreneur for many years and professional business person as well, I have a hard time wrapping my head around how that's going to get paid for. Because if it's simply a redistribution, I've seen redistributions just generally don't work for the long term. And it creates long-term consequences, which then lead also to generational biases, which we're already still dealing with and grappling with, that we need to be rid of now, right? All the racist issues and stuff like that, it's like, let's be done with that and let's move on, right? Everybody's equal. Okay, everyone's equal. We all need to just embrace that and move on. But the thing is that now, for the first time in history, human beings are creating value without even knowing it. For the first time in human history, human beings are creating value by just their normal behaviors. Their data is accruing in value. They're just not the ones monetizing it. So when you go back to that plantation concept, you realize, well, wait a minute, human beings should own their own data. They're the ones sowing the crop. They're the ones, they may not own all the land, but to just simply have the landowner say, no, I'm not going to pay you any part of this is also not right. Even with tenant farmers, in Ireland in the potato famine, you know, the people that lived on the land got a percentage of the surplus, right? They got a piece of the pie. We're not even getting a piece of the pie. We're only exchanging what I would call a contract of adhesion, because we think, oh, I want to cross the street, so therefore I have to pay the toll on the street. But I didn't know that the toll was my firstborn child, right? I had no clue, or even my own identity. That wasn't part of the contract I signed into. So I believe for the first time in human history, we're creating value, and that happens to be the most valuable asset in the world today. So yes, blockchain should be backed by data because it's more valuable than gold. But it's not just backed by data, it should be backed by the control, the individual sovereign control of data. It should be backed by your control of data. And how do you control data? Encryption. Encryption is actually the thing that has been the absolute anchor, right, that has held in place all the value for the dollar. Because otherwise, if it didn't exist, someone could just steal it out of your account. What use is that? You'd be better off.
We're seeing today, Robert, like with more and more frequency, and crypto gets sort of knocked as being the boogeyman in this. But we're seeing more and more the walls of our encryption methodology start to get chipped away.
Absolutely. Right? So I envision an exchange where everyone could have their own cryptocurrency. And that's the platform that we have built at Crown Sterling. That's the platform that we're going to. It's like an Ethereum style platform that, you know, Ethereum is the ERC-20, you know, tokenization process for corporations. I see a day where the whole next trend is going to be for individuals. And it's going to start with people with a lot of influence. Therefore, their data is more valuable in a sense because they have more influence, right? Because they have a lot of social media following, whatever. But I think that's going to trickle down all the way down through society. And you can decide in that context if you ever want to sell your data or not, but you'll have it on your own blockchain. And it'll have a marketable value. And that marketable value will also depend if you ever sell it or not. The less you sell, or you could sell it in buckets. You could sell it, it'll be homomorphic, right? So you could sell, I'm willing to sell my data like the stuff that's the things I'm thinking about purchasing in the future. But I don't want to sell any of my personal data or any of my health data, right? So you could bucketize and decide, okay, I'll sell my demographic, my psychographic, and stuff like this, and that has a certain value. And there'll be a market value for each of those components, both as an individual sale or you contributing it as an aggregation sale. And I believe that is going to be a huge market exchange. So effectively, it's you putting an NFT on your data.
Yeah, Robert, I think that there's going to be an instant market for that. I mean, there's one argument that says, well, you know, the current data arbiters and data sellers wouldn't want to play with something so disruptive. But if you have control over your own data, you could choose, and there will be people who do, choose to provide certain exemplary elements and unique identifying aspects that might not otherwise be able to be collected in aggregate form. And that in and of itself would, I think, seed the market viability, no?
Yeah, well, think about how much money is spent and effort is spent trying to steal data from you without realizing it was stolen. Right? It turns out it takes a lot of effort to fly in and suck your blood and fly out with no marks. And so that's exactly why I think this makes it a much far better way of doing it, because right now they have profiles on everybody that have to be pieced together from all these data that are disparate. And then we have to find a way to create this overall profile that's missing some of the most implicitly important and explicitly important parts, which is your own preferences as an individual, right? The things that you care about, your conscious mind, not just your inferential subconscious data, right? And so that's how you piece together the overall portfolio and the overall profile for someone. Now, you could decide never to sell it, or you decide you might want to sell certain aspects of it. What I can say is that having those aspects pieced together because you are the one doing the piecing makes this data far more valuable. And I think that is going to be absolutely a mechanism as a backing for cryptocurrency in the quite near future. It's better than gold.
Is
It
it?
certainly has like longer and more expansive utility in that. So, Robert, I think, in just our discussions, we hit upon a significant amount of the questions that were coming. We were kind of talking about the topics almost in real time. I just want to take a second to go back and make sure I didn't miss anyone. Yeah, I mean,
Categories.
so do you believe that like open markets for data sales by the individual are going to be the future of decentralized data monetization?
I think it's going to start with the people that are, it won't be long before you have celebrities figuring out that they're better off making their own cryptocurrency.
Now, my concern at like a geopolitical level is obviously speed, and things move rapidly now, and there's always a first mover advantage in this. There's a lot of concern. I have a lot of personal concern with the centralized blockchain that's being created in communist China, where you have the digital yuan that's been launched, ostensibly, obviously, to circumvent the dollar, but also to provide the financial layer to a larger social credit monitoring system.
Snap.
So how quickly do we in the free world need to move before we're completely encircled by a centrally controlled information market that is effectively, data communism?
I think that the good news is that the world it's sort of like the example I gave earlier when
This
you
is
have
really
no
bad,
choice.
just so you know.
And I think we're now coming
Waste.
close to that period of time where the
Digital
world is
waste.
coming up to that moment where we're gonna have
Unnecessary
to make
hype.
some really fundamental choices. But I believe in the resiliency of humanity. I believe in that humanity wants to be free. And being told what you
Right.
can and can't do, that you can't leave your house, we've already gotten a taste of this. And freedom, my dad said to me once when I was young, I said, "Oh, Dad, is this thing free?" And he goes, "Son, nothing worth anything is free, not even freedom." So we're definitely at a stage right now where we're going to be confronted with these choices. But I believe organically, and
It's a
certainly
very poor
China
website,
moves
my love.
very quickly. The U.S. government is going to come out with their own version of cryptocurrency. I had lunch with Jamie Dimon 2 years ago. He told me that Bitcoin was a fraud. Like, he thought it was a fraud. He didn't only say it to me, he said it to lots of other people that were there. And I can tell you, I talked with him, one-on-one afterwards. And I find it interesting now that, JP Morgan has, definitely moved into the crypto space and is wanting to kind of claim a
You can
beachhead
click on
in
contact.
financial management.
What kind of chief
on crypto.
metaverse officer trademark
And
this
what an
is?
about face that
Please.
is from a fraud.
This is
Right?
ego.
Again, ethics come down to whatever it is people believe will benefit them is very often what they call the only ethical choice. Right.
Right.
So I think we're at this stage right now where we are going to be forced to make decisions towards our freedom. Polarity will always exist. No matter how we cut it, it's not a coincidence that half the population is Democrat and half the population approximately is Republican, and the 1 or 2% that swings in the middle is what determines all outcomes on elections. It's not coincidence. It's because that's a natural part of electrical polarity, right? We have this bipolar system, and we're going to continue to have that bipolar system. But I also believe that there's going to be a place to bring more voice to the center. And I believe fundamentally that part of that voice is going to be a voice of libertarianism. I believe that voice is going to be what catapults us away from centralized models like communist China and, or fascist China, however you want to call it. It's a fascist regime. It is what it is.
Yep.
Go there. You'll see pictures of, if you go to a country and you see pictures of the leader all over the place in larger than 30 by 50 pictures, like billboard type thing, that's a fascist regime. It is what it is. So history has told us that. And I think right now we've got such a poor educational system. Young people today are just dying for any kind of wisdom and perspective on historical reference, to the point where nobody believes anything. Nobody believes anymore the education system because we're all tired of being fed narratives that are polarized narratives. one or the other. There's no, and they don't even make any bones about it anymore. Like CNN used to be an independent news station. Now it's sort of like, no, down to Trump. You know, it's like this whole thing. I couldn't even watch it. And the same thing with MSNBC and Fox News too. I can't take it. What happened to balance? What happened to empathy?
Balance? Hello.
What happened to us? You know, wanting to try to put ourselves in another person's shoes and try to at least empathize with their perspective. I think that is going to be what brings balance back to this country.
This is not balance.
And I think that
you know what I mean?
Systems that lead back to the individual and back to this whole notion of governments lead by the consent of the governed. The balance must remain intact. And I think that this is going to be one of the mechanisms that does it.
I certainly hope so. And I think we've, seen how, the rise of independent media has certainly been one of, I think, the warning shots, right? I mean, we had traditional news outlets. Well, part of the, I think, the impetus to, divergence of this type of polarity is the fact that pleasant news doesn't generate click.
I wouldn't like to be in New York at this time,
right?
In this reality.
And this was this competing game for clicks and attention, and you have to get to a hyperbolic type of content in order to generate and being able to adapt, to this new, model of like you don't have as many print subscribers any longer. But I think that opened a window for independent media. That's that market is sorting itself out and starting to mature. So I think you're absolutely right, Robert. So I think that the this concept of self-discovery and self-knowledge is one of the things that one of the great things the internet has brought to us. There's a kid in the Sahara Desert right now that's taking one of the free online available computer programming classes that Stanford offers. He's taking it on YouTube, and I think that's one example of like how data and interconnectivity and then eventually blockchain can really solve this global trust deficit. Right.
Oh, I agree. And I think, that's where this is going. So I'm an optimist. I'm not a pessimist at all. I'm an optimist for the future. I see all of this as no different than an evolution. I don't know if you know the story of a dragonfly, but a dragonfly is born like this little larvae thing that is like a bug that's, underwater. And it lives most of its life underwater, and it climbs up this reed finally to go out of the water because somehow it knows it's time to go out of the water and it's going to become a dragonfly. But it goes through this metamorphosis process, much like a butterfly goes into a cocoon. And as it goes through its own molting process around that, it eventually learns to fly. It becomes a dragonfly, and it flies over the water where it once was and looks down. I see that humanity is going through this dragonfly shift right now. I think the last couple of years has been that. We're all waking up to this extreme polarity, and we're also kind of tired of it. I know I am. I'm just over it. So I want to kind of move on to the next level, and I think the next level is not more of the same, because insanity is defined by doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. It's time for some transition and change, but it's not going to be to more government. It's going to be more self-sovereignty, more individual freedom, not less. So that's what I want to believe in, because that's the world I want my children to grow up in. That's the world that I see that could have a tremendous future, the likes of which we've not seen before, which we could take advantage of technologies that could have tremendous global impact positively for humanity. And no longer just thinking about it as a corporation who's, I'm going to benefit, therefore this is right, but what benefits everybody, because it is possible. This whole thing of win-lose, that has to go also with the transcendence of this polarity. And that's the future that I'm excited about.
No, absolutely, Robert. I think that we're obviously in this era of very dynamic and tumultuous change. But I agree. I think that we stand at the precipice of a renaissance of unbelievable proportion if we really take advantage of it.
It's so exciting what can happen. It is so exciting what can happen. And I really believe that I see so much innovation happening right now, too. So much innovation. So if we have a mechanism that allows for that innovation to continue to be fostered, then the American exceptionalism, and heck, I'd go as far as saying global, this is for humanity, too. This whole idea, one of the things that's beautiful about social media is that it breaks down borders. I have people that follow me on social media that are in Iran, right? That literally, I mean, why they even let them do this, I don't know, because they're supposed to be more of a totalitarian kind of regime.
Persians are pretty crafty, I heard.
Yeah, but see, the thing is that, there you go. But the thing is that I have people that literally I am impacting them and they're impacting me. And it may not be absolutely consistent with what their government wants. And it's now gotten to a stage where they can't control it. And they've learned to turn a blind eye to it. But just as communism in Russia fell, because of the entrance of McDonald's and American culture and movies and television and all that other stuff, these regimes that are totalitarian, authoritarian states, they're not realizing that they've hit the end of their expiration date as well.
2 followers.
I believe that too, Robert.
Great.
And
Wow.
I think that we're right at the end of our time, but I think that's a great way to wrap up our session today, and that we stand at the precipice of something great. And the American ideal and American exceptionalism and blockchain are very much co-aligned. And like I've said before in a few different programs, Bitcoin and blockchain are as American as apple pie.
Absolutely.
And can really take us to somewhere great. So, Robert, thank you very much for being on my show tonight.
Thank you, John. Great to see you.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for your questions. Take care. Good night.
Want to be happy? Build a life, not just a business. Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and this channel will help you.
Please shut up. Okay. Joe Dispenza. I don't think so. Definitely done with Robert Grant's frequency. I'm really wondering. Nothing that I wanna like put out here that it is currently. Yeah, let me just finish with the textiles and sing some songs. So I have songs now downloaded on my computer. Should probably, I'm still figuring out what's the best way to not use Spotify anymore, because I stopped paying for it. Just playing with a little different players. And let's go. You know.
I got your number all night. I'm always on your team, I got your back.
Alright.
Taking those losses if it treats you right. I wanna put you into the spotlight. You know what you've been holding back. Hard times every night. Oh, you know it's not right.
Call you up. Alright. Every time I really think about like the current aesthetics of the metaverse, I really want to give up, on this whole topic. It's just not sophisticated at all. And we're going to up-level the pace levels for us so that we can actually enjoy being in these places, Really. Let's see. we'll have to figure out. And in the tight club. Right here, coming through. PV, you gotta sponsor me. And Robert Grant. Sponsor me with all the locations that you got access to. I'd like to sleep in the pyramid as well. I was at this crystal show, okay? And this, you know, historian, we talked about, you know, pyramids and Egypt. And I told him that I want to sleep in the pyramid, and he's like, "Do you know it's dangerous?" I'm like, "I don't give a fuck." That's not a problem. The problem is to get access and then like be there. Like, dangerous, but you know, in Russia, there's so much sexism. It's intense. I have to say, I'm so shocked by the amount of unbalanced attention I get as a woman specifically, and how deeply like separated the society is between the masculine and the feminine. Like, really. Look how beautiful this is. Yeah, I'm really not enjoying the way that women are treated here in this country. And you know, the thing is, the psychology of women in this country, if you saw some of the TikTok videos that I shared with you, a big problem. The psychology of women is that, you know, the woman is less than, and also at the same time deeply influencing man in terms of money and all of that. It's you know, very reversed from my perspective of humanity, and definitely, you know, this country where I'm at, Russia, is very unbalanced in terms of the way that the women and men are seen. Unequal. Completely unequal. But even Putin said that it's a patriarchal society. By the way, like, let's listen to Putin. Why not? We haven't listened to Putin in a while, so I'm gonna go first do the thing on YouTube that I'm supposed to do, by the way. I forgot completely. Simple thing. At least, you know, number 2. You know? Oops. Click and clean. Now, Putin interview. Lifestyle. I've watched all of these, so that's why. Не затыкай мне рот. Okay, let's listen to Lavrov. Why not?
for your time. There's a lot to talk about. There is Syria, there is North Korea, there's China, there's Ukraine, there's ISIS. But inevitably, I'd like to begin by talking to you about Russian-US relations. There are pictures of you with the Obama administration in which you look unhappy. There are pictures of you with President Trump in which you look like you're having fun.
So what?
Is that the way it is?
I haven't seen any picture of me which could be described as me being happy or unhappy. If I laugh, then the gentleman who talks to me
It's very stupid.
might have heard the
question.
joke. If I don't laugh, the partner might be boring, or partner might be asking for some serious issue to be considered, and then I'm not laughing. But with John Kerry, for example, we laughed a lot. He has, I hope, still very good humor. And we enjoyed our private relations as much as we concentrated on our business, on Syria and elsewhere.
If there is a warmer relationship now with the Trump administration than there have been with previous American administrations.
2017.
There are also messages from Moscow that are unhappy with things, particularly the Russian compounds that were seized by the Americans. What is the real feeling towards Washington as you would describe it right now? Are there particular people within the administration that you think are more constructive to Russia than others? Do you, for example, think that President Trump has a more positive attitude towards Russia than Secretary Tillerson, for example?
Look, we can only rely on what people say and what people do. And it's obvious that during the Obama administration, the irritation, for whatever reason, started building up in Washington against us many years ago, long before Ukrainian crisis, long before anything else which is now cited as the problem in Russian-American relations. The first time I think it was publicly shown was when Edward Snowden